What does a thieving crew overthrowing a god emperor have to do with knights in magical power armor fighting a cyclical war of annihilation? What connects a world where magic is drawn from color to one where an industrial revolution is powered by metal-based magic? The answer is a single shared history. Hi, my name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author myself who created a massive shared universe based on all world mythologies, and I live for these kind of grand-scale connections. And today we're mapping out the entire history of the Cosmere, putting the eras, the books, and the planet-shattering events in chronological order to understand how it all fits together. Before everything, there was a single primordial entity known as Adonalsium. This being was the creative force of the universe, forming the planets we would later know as Roshar, Scadrial, and others. The central world of this era was a planet called Yolen, home to the first humans, but also to two other intelligent species, the Shodel and dragons. While humans on Yolen had reached a Bronze Age level of technology, most other worlds remained primitive. But this wasn't an age of perfect peace. Gods other than Adonalsium existed, and some even died. More importantly, a growing opposition to Adonazium's rule was brewing, leading to at least one failed attempt to destroy the entity before the one that finally succeeded. This ancient era is the bedrock of the entire Cosmere, setting the stage for the cataclysm that would define all of the history to come. Now, the single most important event in the Cosmere's history is the Shattering. This was the moment everything changed. A coalition of 16 individuals from Yolen, including humans, a dragon, and a Shodel, conspired to end Adonazium's reign. They used immensely powerful artifacts known as dawn shards to create a weapon that didn't just kill Adonalsium, but split its power and consciousness into 16 distinct pieces, or shards. These 16 shards each embodied a specific divine attribute like ruin, preservation, honor, or odium, and were taken up by the 16 conspirators who became the new gods of the Cosmere. The event was so fundamental that it serves as year zero for the entire cosmic calendar. All magic, or investiture as it's called in Sanderson's universe, across the universe was now aligned with one of these shards, setting the rules for the wildly different magic systems we see in each of the different series. In the first 2,000 years after the Shattering, the new shards spread out across the stars. Some, like honor and cultivation, traveled together to the Rosharan system. Others, like ruin and preservation, made a fateful pact to create the world of Scadrial from scratch. But this era also saw the first major divine war. On the world of Sel, the shard Odium orchestrated the destruction of two other shards, Devotion and Dominion. Their violent splintering warped the very fabric of magic on that world, creating the unstable and geographically locked power that defines the setting for Brandon Sanderson's debut novel, Elantris. During this period, other worlds like Taldane, the planet featured in the graphic novel White Sand, were also developing. Though its exact placement is uncertain, this story of a civilization built on a world with a dark side and a light side, with magicians who manipulate sand, feels right at home in this early formative period of the Cosmere as different shards settled into their domains. Moving forward to about 3,500 years after the Shattering, a major migration reshaped the world of Roshar. Human refugees fled their dying world of Ashen and arrived on Roshar, bringing the malevolent shard Odium with them. This sparked a conflict with the native singers, initiating the cycle of desolations, apocalyptic wars that would define Rosharan history for thousands of years. The Oath Pact was formed, binding 10 immortal heralds to contain Odium's forces. While Roshar was locked in this cycle of destruction and rebirth, a different kind of history was being made on Scadrial. Around 8,700 years after the Shattering, a man named Rashik took up the power of preservation at the Well of Ascension. He didn't become a god permanently, but he held the power long enough to reshape his entire world, becoming the immortal Lord Ruler and establishing the Final Empire, a brutal, oppressive regime designed to last 1,000 years. This millennium of iron rule is the direct precursor to the entire Mistborn saga. But just before the Lord Ruler's empire would be challenged, another civilization reached its crisis point. Around 8,900 years after the Shattering, the events of the novel Elantris take place on the world of Sel. This story chronicles the fall and potential rebirth of a city of godlike mages who were cursed when their magic failed. The short story The Hope of Elantris is a companion piece that occurs during the novel's climax. On the same world, but in a different region and culture, the novella The Emperor's Soul tells a tightly focused story about a magical forger tasked with recreating the soul of a dead emperor. It's one of the great places to start in the universe as well. And you know, putting these timelines together is quite a massive amount of work. I never run ads or have paid sponsors interrupt videos like this one because frankly, we're a completely self-funded channel. But I do have one thing I think you'll genuinely like, which is my own fantasy all-access library. It grants you access to all of the fantasy novels my team and I have written, set in a massive shared universe where all of the world mythologies coexist. It's what allows me to actually make these videos, and if that sounds interesting, you can check that out at the link in the description. Now, around 9,700 years after the Shattering, the Lord Ruler's 1,000-year empire finally collapsed. This is the era of the original Mistborn trilogy. The story begins with a prequel short story, The 11th Metal, which shows the origins of the legendary survivor Kelsier. Then the revolution unfolds across the main trilogy, the final empire, the Well of Ascension, and the Hero of Ages. A thieving crew led by Kelsier and his protege Vin manages to topple a god. This act unleashes the Shard of Ruin from his prison, leading to a world-ending catastrophe that is only stopped when the scholar Sazed takes up the power of both ruin and preservation, becoming the new dual shard god, Harmony. For a deeper behind-the-scenes look at these events from a cosmic perspective, the novella Mistborn Secret History runs parallel to the entire trilogy, revealing what was happening in the background with Kelsier's soul and other world hoppers. So following this era-defining event, it's one of the biggest and most important places, and one of my personal favorite to start. Around the year 9990, the story of Warbreaker takes place on the world of Nalthis. While it's a standalone novel, its story of returned gods, sentient swords, and a magic system based on color and breath introduces characters and concepts that become critically important in later Cosmere books. Now, roughly 4,500 years after the Heralds abandoned the Oath Pact and left one of their own to suffer alone, he finally breaks. This marks the beginning of the modern era of the Cosmere around the year 10,000 and kicks off the events of the Stormlight archive. Talon's return to Roshar signals the start of the True Desolation, a final war against the forces of Odium. This massive ongoing epic unfolds in a specific order. The story begins in the Way of Kings as we meet Kaladin, a soldier turned slave, bonding a Spren, Shallan, a scholar from a dark past, and Dalinar, a high prince haunted by visions of the past. Words of Radiance continues their story as the Knights Radiant begin to reform. The novella Edgedancer bridges the gap following the Radiant named Lift. The conflict escalates dramatically in Oathbringer, where armies clash and the true nature of the war is revealed. The next novella, Dawnshard, follows a side expedition to a mythical island. Then, in Rhythm of War, the war takes a devastating turn as Odium's forces occupy the central tower of Urithiru, and a new, even more dangerous vessel takes control of the Shard Odium. The first arc of this epic concludes with the book Wind and Truth, which I won't spoil for you here. About 300 years after the previous trilogy on Scadrial, and just 50 years after the start of the True Desolation on Roshar, we enter the Industrial Revolution. The Mistborn Era 2, also known as the Wax and Wane series, begins about 10,050 years after the Shattering. Scadrial has advanced to a 1910s era level of technology, complete with firearms, trains, and early electricity, all integrated with allomancy and ferochemy. The series kicks off with the Alloy of Law, introducing lawman Waxilium Ladrian. The short story Allomancer Jack in the Pits of Eltania is a fun, pulpy adventure from this period. The main story continues with Shadow of Self and the Bands of Mourning as Wax and his team uncover a conspiracy involving another shard meddling with their world. The era concludes with the Lost Metal, where Scadrial finally makes first contact with other Cosmere-aware peoples, setting the stage for a future space age. This period also includes several of Sanderson's secret project novels. The era after this also includes several of Sanderson's secret project novels. We have Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is a whimsical adventure that takes place on a world with spore-filled oceans, happening sometime after the first Mistborn era. We have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which is a beautiful, self-contained story on a new world. But most critically, the Sunlit Man is set far in the future of the Cosmere, following a character we know from Roshar, who is now on the run across the stars in a full-blown spacefaring era. The far future of the Cosmere has already been glimpsed. The novella Sixth of the Dust takes place on the planet First of the Sun, a world with a simple magic system and a quiet civilization. Their peace is shattered by the arrival of the Ones Above, advanced spacefaring people from other worlds. This is our first real look at the space age, an era of interplanetary travel, trade, and conflict. The events of the Sunlit Man confirm this trajectory, showing that the conflicts between shards have escalated into a cosmic arms race. Scadrial, with its blend of technology and the metallic arts, has become a major spacefaring power. The novel Isles of the Emberdark expands upon the story that was started in Six of the Dust. This is where the timeline is headed, from desperate medieval worlds to a connected high-tech galaxy where the ancient power of the shards now fuels interstellar war. Now, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Cosmere and want to join a community of people who love exploring massive fictional universes, you should check out my school group, the Fantasy All Access Library. It's how I fund this channel. It's where you get all my fantasy books. And we release one or more every single month, plus audiobooks. Plus you get weekly live calls with me, a vibrant community of fellow fantasy fans, and a whole lot more. It's the best way to support the channel and dive into another huge world of myth and magic. So you can find the link in the description below, and thanks for watching.